School of Rock. Santa Ana.
Hey, everybody. Hey, kids. My name is Mica Winsett, longtime friend of Chris and musical collaborator and, musical partner for many years. And
the genius behind the madness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing, I started playing when I was 14 years old, playing guitar. My dad had always played, kind of in the background. And, when I was a kid, I didn't have much interest in playing it, mostly, I think, because I wasn't really into his music. He was playing his music, from his, like old rock and roll and blues and bluegrass, country blues, stuff like that, and, I was a 14-year-old teenager, being inspired by heavy metal. So that was what I wanted to play.
Right. Sure.
That old Mica, the Ride the Lightning album. Was, really.
That was it. That was pretty influential on you, right? I mean, that was really the first album when we've talked, that was kind of the first album that made you sit back and like, I want to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I heard guitar tracks from that record and, just listening to that going, wow, what is that sound of that instrument? It was the distortion on the guitar that got me. I had heard, obviously other electric and acoustic guitars, but I hadn't heard something, like
heavy,
that shred and, that tone really got me, and just the energy behind it. So, yeah, I kind of had a dual track, I guess, upbringing, of, on one hand playing blues and country with my dad, and he would sing, and, I would sort of try to accompany him and, learn the chords and parts he was doing. And then on my own, obviously he wasn't into that. I'd just be shedding metal and he's cringing in the background like, oh, what are you doing?
This isn't real music. What are you doing? You're wasting your life. Yeah.
But that was good, I think, to just expand my horizon, like you can tend to get, when you love something, you want to go after it. And that's what I was doing with metal, but I may not have considered, blues or country or bluegrass, had I not had that early exposure to it. So, it's kind of like developing on two paths at once, doing like a fingerstyle thing, with the country, and then working, with a pick on my my metal stuff, and also the bluegrass, was very lent itself to a flat pick. So it was good actually having, a couple of different places to, express music.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think, and we've talked a lot about this, having as many influences as you possibly can, being open to as much music as you can. A lot of people, you ask them, what kind of music do you like, or what do you listen to? They're like, oh, anything. I listen to anything, And then you're like, oh, well, how about some Franz Liszt, And they're like, I don't know who that is. You're like, well, it's pretty standard classical fare, And they're like, I don't really listen to a lot of classical music. Or they're like, oh, I like classical. I'm like, oh, when was the last time you listened to classical? Oh, I don't listen to it at all. Well, how about some jazz? How about some John Coltrane? You're like, oh, I don't really listen to that. So then you kind of start narrowing it down. You're like, well, so you really don't like anything, you like what you listen to, and we're all that way. It's not accusatory. I'm not trying to like, gotcha, like, yeah, you don't really like music, we like what we like. Just like you said, we're passionate about what we like,
Yeah, we all have preferences, probably based on our personalities and, just like maybe our energy levels or something. I don't have the energy that metal requires. I think when I was a teenager, that energy was just coming. It was natural. And so that was a genre that I really
connected with.
Into.
Yeah.
But these days, I don't feel that kind of like metal energy coursing through myself. So I'm, just exploring other, genres and things that do sort of speak to you, like mentally, also physically, you can really get a physical reaction from certain kinds of music. And, sometimes you even have to move your body in certain ways to play certain kinds of music.
Sure.
And, if you're feeling an on beat or time signature or something.
Yeah. Grooving in that language, in that rhythm, in that vein, where you're finding that voice, you have to follow along with it, whether it's a dance or a movement or something there, Yeah. I like that, man. I think it's important to be exposed. And I think it's the same way that you're talking about, had your father not sort of enforced that, I don't use the word enforced. Had he not really encouraged and kind of made you play that other style, you may not have embraced it. And then you lose out on a lot of those fundamentals that you pick up early on doing the finger picking or doing that style of music that it becomes harder to learn those techniques and that stuff later on, and not impossible, but when you learn them earlier on, it's just more part of your style. It's more part of your playing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you can incorporate techniques, and then I mean, also just the willingness, I guess, to accept, you know, things that might, you know, as a 14-year-old teenage boy, you know, country and bluegrass was not at all, you know, on my radar, or something that
right.
you know, my social group was at all interested in. But
Mm,
you know, again, like just having that open mind and being exposed to it and
yeah.
having a good experience with it and finding, you know, some amazing tracks. And I've done that, you know, throughout my life, you know, just exploring other genres of music. I mean, and the best of the best is there in every
Yeah.
genre. I mean, you can put the best, you know, classical piece up there, you know, the best country song. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
there's amazing works of art in every
Every
genre, and if
genre.
you're willing
Absolutely.
to, you know, at least give it a chance or check it out, you know.
For sure. There's something to learn too from each of those styles. I mean, even if you're not going to continually play in a country style, or for country, bluegrass, blues, whatever, you're not going to continuously play like, you know, Kirk Hammett or some of these like metal shredder guys or whatever, you know.
Mhm.
But just listening to it and being open to it and learning some of those techniques, and you can take those techniques back and play them in your style and add in a whole new voice, a whole new part of your own music, and incorporate it. And that's what I love about songwriting. And that's sort of, you know, the thrust of what we want to talk about today is, you know, you and I have written a ton of songs together. You've written a ton of songs. I mostly consider myself a songwriter, although I played in the United States Navy band and cover bands playing other people's music for years. And of course you
Mhm.
played in bands yourself playing other people's music. Mostly I consider myself, and I won't speak for you, but as a songwriter, I mean, that's what I love to do. And that's what I enjoy doing. Um, and so in songwriting, if you stick with just the tried and true approach, you can write a lot of really good material and a lot of really good songs, but you're going to end up, and to some degree, you always end up sounding like someone else. You know, you're going to sound like it's someone else's voice, like it's someone else. If all you listen to is the Beatles, you probably write a lot of really cool and catchy tunes, but they're going to sound like you've listened to the Beatles, you know, like, I mean, and that's not a negative. That's just how it is. Right.
Yeah, people often will, you know, try to point to your influences after they hear, oh, that reminds me of, you know, such
Sure.
and such. And yeah, it's totally natural. I mean, we all start from somewhere, you know, we all have this like background of, you know, music that we're into and speaks to us. And you're
Right.
going to, you know, mimic that in some ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's super intentional. You'll just steal a lick from somebody and be
Right.
like, oh, you know, what a
That's
cool little
cool.
idea. But
Yeah.
you know, you want to I mean, that's really the challenge is finding a unique voice and coming up with something different. You know,
Yeah.
we've just got so many hundreds of years of music that
Right.
behind us now that it sometimes seems hard. You know, it's like everything's been written, every chord
Yeah.
progression's
Sure.
been done, every note's been played. And
Played. Sure.
so then it's just finding, you know, ways outside of those constraints, you know, or
Yeah.
other ways to, I guess, you know, put a stamp on something or put your own unique spin, or just find a
Yeah.
creative part. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, totally groundbreaking or something, but
Right.
you know, creative part that fits the song is, you know, most of the time best you can ask for, and you're
Absolutely.
stoked when you get
When you
something like that.
can. Yeah, for sure, man. And opening yourself up to different genres and different listening avenues. So if you're writing a lot of country music or listening to the Beatles or whatever it is that you're mostly doing, listen to something else. You know, listen to a bluegrass tune, listen to a classical tune, listen to some jazz, listen to something that's outside of it. And then it becomes easier, I think, a little bit to find your voice, because it naturally starts to speak. Because when you take the parts of the thing that your heart is like, my heart is for country music, or my heart is for blues, or my heart, like that's where I really live, you know. But then
Mhm.
but you will appreciate parts of other music. So as you start to listen to those other parts, you're like, oh, but I also like this, you know, 2/5 from jazz, or, you know, I really like this super shred flat picking part from metal, or I really like this classical progression, the way that the chords change, or the, you know, the inner voice leading, whatever it is. You'll identify naturally with some of those other parts, and then you'll start to say, hey, let me bring that into what I'm doing. You know, you'll start to bring that in, even subconsciously. It won't necessarily even be as explicit as that, but you'll start to find those elements showing up, and then it's like your voice. Then it's like, this is where my heart is. I'm a country writer, I'm a blues writer, I'm a whatever, singer songwriter writer, whatever it is. but your voice speaks then in the influences you have and the things that you like and the way that you express yourself specifically through all of your global influences and not just that one vein, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. You find a lot of players these days that really synthesize different styles. You know, there'll be a jazz player, but then also a lot of country leanings, and you'll hear, you know, they'll sneak in kind of cliche licks or
Sure.
you know, very common licks. And you're like,
Right.
whoa, that's, you know, you just threw that in from a different lexicon. I mean, I guess it's
Right.
being, you know, kind of like being able to speak multiple languages and, you know,
Yeah.
borrowing phrases or little idioms from another language, and, you know,
Yeah, man. I like the term synergy too.
doing math. Yeah.
That's a lot of what we do, I think, as musicians and as people, as humans. I mean, that's one of our greatest adaptations is synergy, taking on the information that's around us, our five senses, or taking in this piece from here and this piece from there, or like someone tells me one thing and someone else tells me something other. It's our ability to take in all of that information and then create something with it. You know, we're not experiencing our world just through vision or just through touch or just through, although some of us have that limitation, most of us synthesize all of that information into one point of view, you know, our worldview, how we see things, how we do things. And it's that synthesis that makes us, you know, that's our viewpoint. That's who we are as individuals, you know? And so I really love that term that you use, synthesis, you know, looking around for all the things that you like and all the things that influence you. And really even doesn't have to be music necessarily. Like, you know, art influences you to feel or think or experience life in a certain way, or, you know, a nature walk or the ocean or whatever it is. And then those things get synthesized into your sound, into your person, into who you are and how you write and how you experience not just music but life in general, and it can come out through your art, whatever that is, music, painting, or whatever. I mean, business is an art of itself as well, and that's how we synthesize, is how we produce.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Art is totally driven by experience. I think, you know, if you have some kind of experience, beautiful experience or a terrible experience or a
Sure.
fun or a sad, you know, like you can take something from that and translate it into an art. You know, whether you want to write a song about it or paint a, you know, painting about it. I mean,
Right.
I think that's how, you know, artists work. They're inspired by daily even experiences. I mean,
Yeah.
artists would sometimes record a song, you know, based on what happened on Monday. I heard
Sure.
about, you know, Hendrix, I think, wrote "Wind Cries Mary" the night before he recorded, based on something that had happened earlier that week. I mean,
Wow.
so, you know, something fresh in your mind is going to be,
Mm,
you know, maybe easier to reflect on and,
yeah.
you know, think about how you want to, you know, express that or get that feeling out.
It's like
And
visceral at that point. It's an experience. You can really feel that experience wholly
oh yeah,
immediately, you know?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's what, like, a lot of the, you know, maybe the punk movement or the metal movement, it was a very visceral, physical, like, kind of release of, you know, some kind of pent up frustration or energy, or, you know,
Sure.
making some kind of comment about society. So yeah, I mean, the
Absolutely.
body and the mind are very connected, I think,
Yeah.
around music and art.
So is
Yeah.
that how would you describe your sort of personal songwriting style and how you approach it? We've talked about it several times, and I know that it can change depending on where you are at any given moment. You know, these days, how do you approach songwriting, and how do you look at it? What is your kind of take on how you begin a song, where you get the ideas, and how to develop it? You know.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends. I think the songs that I've written have come about in a variety of ways. I mean, it usually
Mm,
starts with like I said earlier, a seed, you know, some kind of
mm,
seed of an idea, and how you get those is, you know, it depends. I mean, rarely you'll just
mm.
sort of birth like a complete idea, you know,
Uh,
and that's so rare when it happens. It's like a gift, you know, when you get
yeah,
something like, oh man, there's just
this just fits. It's
it just,
perfect. Yeah.
you know, just perfect, like complete idea. But
Mm,
that's really rare. Usually for me, it starts with, you know, just a very basic idea.
mm.
Like when I was a kid, I used to, when I was walking to school, I would kind of step in a rhythm. So I'd have
Uh,
like this clip clop, and I would sort of hum like a little melody in my
uh,
head as I was walking to school.
uh,
So, I mean, and I didn't even, that was before I was even playing guitar or, you know, interested in music at all. But I
right.
was doing that sort of mindlessly, really. And, now that I think back on, I'm like, oh, there might have been some,
Something,
I don't know if there's
something
anything good in
there.
there, but I've
Yeah.
always sort of done that, just like
Uh,
hear something and it'll happen in just a weird times. A lot of times when I'm driving or happen to be listening to something,
mm,
I'll often like try to like build on something. Like if I record something, I usually listen to it in the car a lot, and I'll
okay.
just kind of like analyze it and hear it, and then eventually I'll hope to hear something else to complement that.
Mm,
Make their part to go along with it.
okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean, how those seeds of ideas come. I mean, a lot of times they're just like little happy accident. I'll just be sitting down at the guitar,
Mm,
kind of messing around, and then I'll just stumble on something. Oh, I kind of like that, and
yeah,
then I'll figure what did I do, and then I'll start analyzing it more theoretically. Like, oh,
sure.
I went to the flatted seven, or something like. I'll try and figure out what musically happened there, but
Sure.
sometimes it'll just catch my ear, and yeah, it's really hard to sort of say, like how you can do that
Right.
reliably, but
Yeah.
they happen when I'm sitting down playing. Sometimes those pop into my head when I'm nowhere near an instrument, and
Mm,
I'll, like I said, I'll grab my phone, turn on the
yeah.
voice memo, and record that little piece, and then
Yeah.
um, come back later, transcribe it onto the guitar or to another instrument, and
Yeah.
see where it goes. I mean, so yeah, I mean, always starting with these little seeds, and then it's a really fun process of kind of developing, because when it's just a little basic idea, it can go any number of directions. Like we could take this heavy metal, we could take
Sure.
this, uh,
It's just an
it's
idea
like
at that
a
point. Yeah.
mellow classical
Right.
vein. I mean, the interpretation, I guess, of
Can
it,
change.
is yeah. I mean, that's why
Yeah.
you see all these cool. Um, stripped down acoustic versions of songs,
Crossovers
or
and
sometimes the other
yeah.
way. It started as a
Hmm.
very stripped down, solo acoustic and voice, and then
Yeah.
they'll arrange it for full symphony and orchestra,
Right.
and
Yeah.
um,
I think too, another key that I got out of, what you're saying too is like consistently expecting to come up with like brilliant ideas. That's maybe a little unrealistic, but you are doing it constantly all of the time. And I think we've heard that analogy a lot with like photographs, and I think that's probably the most common, but it's like you take 1,000 pictures and you get like one good one, and it's the same thing with music and with songwriting. And it's really the same thing with anything, the
yeah,
odds of making one and only one really amazing thing is pretty low. Whereas making one amazing thing out of 1,000 things that you tried, going through the failure process, right? Like trial and error process, that story is much more common. You need to be spending time with it if you want to be a songwriter, if you want to write tunes, expecting every song to be a number one hit, or even expecting every song to be listenable, really, when you start, like is pretty unrealistic. And no one that is a serious songwriter would tell you that that's a realistic expectation. They would tell you that, be easy on yourself, go easy on yourself. The first song you write doesn't have to be the last song you write, like continually write and continually improve. And even sometimes, the ideas when we were writing songs together and we'd play them, and sometimes the songs that we weren't super keen on, we're like, this one's all right, it's cool. And then you go play it out and people are like, oh man, I really connected with that song, or I really like that
yeah,
tune. And we're like, that song, like,
yeah. That is funny how that happens. The ones that are that are your favorites may not be,
right,
the one that everybody latched onto, or like you
right,
said, everybody latched onto the one that you were like not as stoked
right.
about. Yeah, it's weird how that
Yeah,
worked, but yeah, I agree, you're totally right about it. It's a numbers game.
yeah.
You gotta That's why I've got just literally hundreds of ideas on my phone, because I
Hmm.
know most of them are probably you know
Just a fleeting
a
moment.
seed that's
Yeah,
just never going to grow,
yeah,
or I mean, I could try developing a lot, but it just may not be anything there. But it's
yeah.
tempting to, I think, let something go, to dismiss an idea that you think maybe doesn't have merit. But
Mm,
I think it's worth exploring it a little more, and not
mm.
dismissing it too early. You might
Oh
think
yeah.
that's not going anywhere, but there was something to it, that made you
record it, write it down,
that struck you
whatever.
about it enough
Yeah,
to at least play it a few times or record it or write it
right.
down. So, there may be something there, and
Yeah.
it's worth, maybe it's not quite right, but yeah, I mean, it really is a lot of crafting. It's
Mm-hmm.
like one note might need to change, or one chord might need
Sure.
to change and then everything feels right.
It
It's really
fits.
funny to me how that
Yeah.
works. A phrase can be like 99% there, but
Mm-hmm. It's missing
but
that thing,
feels
that's
bad. Yeah, it
something.
feels
Yeah.
not right at all. But
Right.
then one little adjustment, and then it feels great.
And that's it.
How.
That's that click. It clicks.
Mhm,
Yeah. I
mhm.
think that's an interesting point to bring up is the line, how to manage that ROI. How to manage, am I putting a bunch of effort into a song that's really not going to go anywhere, or am I throwing away a song that could be really well developed if I put a little extra time into it? That's a
Mm.
and I don't think, I'll ask you if you think there's a way to make that call. I'm not, I'm personally not really convinced there's a way to know that, but there is a point at which I'll look at a tune and I'm like, man, I've spent 30 hours. I've mixed this. I've got all these extra instruments. I put strings in it. I got this on, I got this. And like, I don't really think this is going to work out, buddy. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we're always, I think, our own harshest critics too. I mean,
mm-hmm.
that's why it's good to, like, if you're, I think if you're thinking about abandoning something, or if you're just not sure, to get another set of ears on it, and just be like, hey, I came up with this. I'm not loving it right now. What do you think? Should I,
Right.
I mean, I would do that with you. I would ask you to listen to something and,
Yeah.
see if that's going anywhere, or, and
Yeah.
that's what you need, brutal honesty from.
Yeah.
You need somebody to be able to give you that kind
People
of
you trust.
feedback, I think.
Having that group too, that's another really good point is find other people that are also interested in songwriting or whatever you're doing. Specifically today, we're talking about songwriting, but find a good
Mm.
group, a good cohort of individuals that you can trust and build a relationship with, because you're right. You're often not, you're your own worst critic and you're your least objective observer, so you are really in the worst position to judge whether something is going to be positive or negative to other people. You can say that you like it or not, but ultimately music is to be shared. So finding that cohort, finding that group, even, the two of us wrote a ton of songs together, and even just having one other person that you trust and that, is honest with you and on that same page of, hey, let's write some cool songs, and yeah, that works or not. And they're going to help you when the song needs help, and tell you honestly, hey, this probably is just not going to work out or whatever. Even having one other person like that is very beneficial. And if you can find a couple, like a good group to be in, you're really in the right place then, and starting with that mentality of like, I'm just going to bring all these ideas. I'm going to try to, get my best together. There are little songwriting collectives you can join online. You have to be a little careful about doing
Yeah.
that stuff online, because, people will steal ideas, and it's difficult because nowadays we're not meeting people in person as much. We had the opportunity. We were in the same room all the time, once a week at that jazz class, and then more often, outside of the class, writing and doing that stuff. So that is a huge advantage, having that real personal time with someone you trust, to take you through that songwriting experience. I think that's a huge thing.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that to me, like in my musical development, having a songwriting partner and a musical collaborator, has always just been like the biggest gift. Really, I
Yeah.
mean, you that's just how people work. We really
Yeah.
build off of each other's ideas. Nobody can know everything, but if
Right.
10 people who all know a little bit of something different get together, they can accomplish amazing stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that all of the top 40 and most pop, well, I mean, I would even say
Almost
all
all pop.
are
Yeah. Right.
are done by a team of
Yeah.
songwriters, up to
Mm-hmm.
10, sometimes even
Mm-hmm.
more songwriters. That's the norm. I mean,
Yes.
not rock bands. I mean, in bands, I think the dynamics can be different, where you will often have a primary songwriter, and
But everyone tends to contribute their parts, and like
yeah,
someone has the
yeah,
idea and the seed, and indeed someone takes credit for writing the song, as with a lot of bands, and there can be some contentions about that. But everyone in the
for sure.
band contributes their part to that song.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having other people to bounce ideas off of, and to inject something, a different frame of reference. Everybody's got a
Sure.
different background, different point of view.
Yeah.
I was talking recently with a musical collaborator, another musical collaborator that I work with, and a good friend of mine. And
Yeah.
he and I were talking about, having a similar conversation. And I think, it's good to bring like starts of ideas to somebody, and then to kind of work on things collaborative, kind of share ideas and get that push and pull and the feedback and the, synergy, I guess, between the different personalities. I mean, I just feel like it adds so much to music, and to, realizing kind of like a bigger ambitious goal than maybe what one person could accomplish.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
occasionally you do get the rare, genius who's got a full-fledged
Song,
musical idea
Well,
with every part worked out, and all
Yeah.
you need is them in the studio telling everybody else what to do. But that's pretty rare. I mean,
there are Elton Johns and, James Browns, and like there are a few of these guys that had the whole songs worked out in their heads. And, a lot of the stories about those guys is they were notoriously not really easy to work with either. Like they had the whole idea in their head. They were a one-man show.
Vision like that, that you must, accomplish. And I imagine those artists do have that. It's an absolute drive that they have to, realize that solely, their vision, and wouldn't want, I guess, something else to cloud that. And I totally respect that process, but I think it's much more common to have, especially in today's pop, to have these teams of songwriters. Bless you.
Excuse me.
It really helps so much to have, that kind of platform, to build ideas from.
That's how most aside from those sort of freak prodigy individuals, that's how most music gets written. I mean, in reality, 99% probably of music that you hear, even by bands. I mean, people talk about some pop artists and they like to throw around names like Taylor Swift and a couple other people who supposedly write their own songs. And it's just inaccurate, like there's just no way. They're not, they may or may not have the idea or the impetus for the song, but they're not creating the song in a way that you would think if you saw the whole process, from when they brought the idea into the studio to when it came out the other end as a full song. No reasonable thinking person would be like, oh yeah, they're in charge of that entire song, from the engineer to the producer to the person who's like playing whatever guitar parts, bass parts, drum parts on the background, they may or may not have even written the lyrics at all. They might have come in with an idea about, hey, I want to write a song about, this guy I met or whatever. And I have like this hook, and then the songwriters come in and they're like, oh yeah, here's 6 people. They're going to write the rest of the lyrics for you, So, that's just the way that it is. And it's not, also, I don't want to sound like a critique of them, or that I'm, trying to say that makes it any less their song or any less, musical or something like that. But just to understand for people that want to have that life, that want to, be Taylor Swift and write their own songs or whatever, that's not really what's happening, and regardless of how the label sells it and the information that they tell you to the public, that's just not really the way that it is, like it takes a team of people to make that record sound like that, to take that song and make it sound like that. I mean, there's just no way that any one person is doing any of that stuff anymore. It just doesn't do that,
Yeah, I mean, with probably some rare exceptions, I think that is definitely the standard. In fact, there's a show that's kind of interesting called Songland. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of about the process of, taking a seed of an idea and crafting it through to the end. And, and you do see how multiple collaborators can really change a song, from the original demo to what ends up on the record. Sometimes completely different animal with, changed lyrics, maybe a different chord progression, maybe a whole new, newly written chorus, something totally different than what was originally written and proposed. So I think it happens more organically though in bands, in band settings. It's like in I guess the pop industry, the way they do it, you
machine
lyrical person, and you've got the arranger, and everybody's coming in from a very like a role based type of thing,
right?
Where their job to do. In bands, maybe somebody would,
hey, how about this here? How about this there?
Lyric, or, the bass player would propose a drum fill or something, you know. It just
Sure.
feels like when I played in bands more
Should be this here, or should be that
natural and
there.
organic. I mean,
Right.
and when you and I wrote stuff, it always felt organic. I mean, I think that's
Right.
just because we were having fun, and you know, we were sometimes stay up
All
you know,
hours just
till
writing
4 or
music.
5 in
Yeah.
the morning, not
Right.
even realizing what time. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, fun and being productive. And,
Right.
you know, maybe that's what's needed to get those ideas. You know, I
Yeah.
always feel more productive, and you know, after a couple hours of working on stuff, the juices are flowing. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to warm up just like anything else. So
Get into
if you
it.
don't write a great, you know, riff within the first 5 minutes of sitting down, don't
Oh,
worry.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, sticking with it a little bit. And I thought while I was saying that too of another artist that I actually heard of recently is Tom McDonald, and he's this rapper guy that just came out. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Yeah.
he's released some sort of controversial videos, and apparently, and I've looked into it a little bit, although not extensively, he writes and produces all of his own music. He does everything himself from his house. Everything is done from himself, and his girlfriend, who he also who he lives with, Nova Rockefeller, she works, does all his videos. So she produces all of his music videos. So literally the two of them in their house produce, write, they create all their CDs. Now the CDs are pressed at another location. So I mean, there is some outsourcing of some of the mechanical details and stuff, you know?
Sure.
So then
Yeah.
still it's a team, you know, in some regards, in some respects, and they sell all their music online and stuff, but they're actually selling physical CDs. And he went on. Yeah, it was actually interesting because I don't even know how I heard about him. It was some random thing on Facebook or something. I don't know. He's not really the type of music I would typically listen to. It's pretty heavy rap stuff, you know, and it's not really the type of music I would typically listen to, but I just clicked on it for fun. Maybe I found him on a YouTube, one of those YouTube rabbit holes you start going down, you know?
Oh yeah.
So I listened to it. I was like, man, this is really interesting. Like this guy, he's making fun of rappers and poking fun at the industry. And like, he really has some pretty upsetting lyrics depending on who you are. And really interesting guy. So I started looking into him a little bit, and he posted this video of him talking about his music. And he just came out with like 2 new albums, and people apparently were upset and like sending him messages because they couldn't get his music on Spotify and Apple and Amazon. Only some of his songs are on there, and YouTube. And then so the CDs have like 20 songs or something, but only 10 songs are available from these streaming platforms. And so he went on and made a very real and honest video. And, you know, I didn't look into it extensively, but I did kind of test his claim and like, hey, you know, are you doing this? And it does seem that it's produced by him and written by him. And he said, we are doing this on purpose because it's just me and my girlfriend Nova. She records and produces all of our music videos. I record and produce all of our music, all of his music. And we don't make any money on Spotify. We don't make any money on Apple Music. He's like, we make money from selling CDs. We're the artist, and we want to keep the money. I mean, he's very honest about it. And additionally, he said, this is my music. He said, when I was coming up and growing up, you would buy a CD, you would line up outside of a store to buy an album so that you could listen to it all the way through. And he's like, it's kind of disappointing to me that doesn't happen anymore. You get these singles released after singles released after singles after singles, and nobody releases albums.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of upset about that. And so he released this video just talking about that. I'm never going to do that. You know, you're going to have to buy a CD from him, and that's the way he does it. And I have a lot of respect for that. You know, like I think that's actually pretty admirable that he's doing very well. I mean, he actually, as a matter of fact, he unseated. So Cardi B, the new song, and I don't want to put her name out there at all or endorse that kind of music at all. But anyway, she was number 1 on the hip hop charts, and he unseated her at the number 1 spot. So he, as an independent artist, unseated the number 1 hip hop artist that was streaming. So like, did a really fantastic job. So sort of like Macklemore was doing not that long, you know, a few years ago or whatever. He's sort of doing that same thing again now. So that was really interesting. I appreciated that. And I have another buddy actually that I did a stream with that's going to be on the program, Akami, and she's releasing a record and also selling them, you know, selling physical copies of the record all as one. She's selling them online. So you will be able to download it, but it's going to all come out at the same time. She's not releasing singles. She's not doing the thing that everybody's doing, you know, just releasing to release. You know, she wants it to be a finished product and piece of music, you know, and I think that's an interesting line to walk, talking about songwriting. Is you used to buy the Zeppelin album and it was the whole album was like an album, you know, or like you would listen to it all the way through and it was an experience. Rush and these guys that had whole albums that were real pieces of art in and of themselves as an album. And now it's just, you know, you release your number one and then you release the next number one, then you release the next number one, you know, like, how do you think about that? I mean, like, what's your perspective on that? You know?
I mean, I love the album, just the concept of the album, and particularly concept albums.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah, I think it's you know, kind of unfortunate that today, you know, we're really, everybody's after singles. I mean, that may be how some people write songs, and I think this team of songwriters thing really lends itself to releasing a single.
Yeah,
you know, an
sure.
album, I think, you know, is more focused, especially a concept album would be more representative of, you know, like a band's artistic vision or personality. There was always, you know, cool artwork that would go along with it.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff is, unfortunately, you know, we don't get album releases like that. I mean, they would have little hidden tracks and, you know, just kind of cool stuff. I mean, a lot of albums, you know, when I hear the single now, or, you know, someone will come on the radio, and when it gets to the end, I'm ready
that
for the
next song
album track to come on. And when it doesn't, or when a different song comes on, it always kind of weirds me out, because I'm so used to hearing two songs, you know, kind of in a row there.
Right.
I mean, an album is just such a cool, complete vision of something, you know, that somebody wanted to say, you know, a lot of stuff.
Sure.
I mean, about a lot of different topics. Dark Side of the Moon, you know, one of the coolest concept albums, where every song was about a different sin or vice. You had like money and war and
very,
you know,
cool.
all the different topics. They really, you know, had a statement to make, and that's what's really cool about an album or concept album. You can have a whole statement, and you can take people through on a journey, you know, through all kinds of different, you know, feelings and emotions and moods, whereas it's difficult to do that
in 3 minutes. I mean, 3.5 minutes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. A radio single, especially.
Right. Yeah. A couple, I mean, some groups are, you know, Tool released an album not that long ago that was sort of, you know, still an album, you know, and there are guys that are doing it. You're just not seeing it, guys and girls, people doing it. You're just not seeing it in, popular music. That's not a popular thing to do. And even in any of the chart topping, I mean, country music, which has been traditionally and for years was like all the songs were stories, you know, and like everything was supposed to tell a story and it was supposed to take you through these experiences. And even that has gone largely to the single route. You know, they release, you know, Blake Shelton's latest release and this person's latest single. And actually getting back to Taylor Swift, as a matter of fact, one good point for her, she is still sort of releasing albums. She does do albums still. So, you know, I'm getting back again to that, because I don't want to sound like I'm like talking bad about any of these artists. They all have something to say and they all have their way to express it. This is just really a conversation about sort of the different approaches and different things. And, you know, singles have taken away a lot of that content that you and I, as older musicians now, appreciated, you know, the album art and this hidden tracks and, you know, all of these little things that were sort of Easter eggs that you kind of can't get anymore, you know, or they're doing them in different ways. I mean, some guys have hidden videos or, you know, like different things, and people are trying to do that kind of stuff because it is cool no matter how you do it. But we are missing that a little bit. I am, and it sounds like you are, and I know a lot of other people are kind of missing that, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
What are you writing on these days, man? What are you working on specifically? Like guitar parts? Are you working with other instruments? Are you working on a concept album? Are you working on individual songs? Like, what is it that you're sort of focusing on?
No, working on a concept album right now. Musical partner, friend of mine, we did a concept album a while ago, and that was pretty fun. Just a real quick one. You know, we thought of the concept, kind of made a roadmap, wrote everything down, and you know, wrote different pieces. That was cool. That was the first time I had done, you know, something like that.
What was it about? What was your concept album about? What did you guys decide to write on?
Well, it was a little ambitious. I think it was about the basically end of the world and then a new beginning. You know, seeing how I guess trying to paint, you know, musically what the evolution of the world would be like from
the end to the next beginning.
Yeah, from the end to the beginning.
Yeah.
And then back around.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, we had a couple of different sections, and you know, for the end of the world, we had some crazy sound effects. I haven't showed you that one yet. I'll have to send that down to you.
Oh, okay.
So you
When
can-
did you guys have you released that one yet, or are you still?
No,
Okay.
we've got with this my current project, great group of guys and good friends and collaborators. Unnamed project, as
Okay,
yet, but
sure.
we've got tons of material. I mean, years worth of material. Just
Sure.
And actually, 2020 was supposed to be the year that we recorded some of it, but
It was
things had
everybody's year, man.
Yeah, actually, I mean, back in January, we had started getting together with a drummer, and we're really looking forward to getting into the studio and recording, and totally got sidelined. But we've been recording just on our own with our home studios and simpler technology.
Yeah.
So we'll probably just produce demos that way for now until studios open up
Gotcha.
and we can book some time.
Yeah. Right on, man. So do you record a lot of stuff on the computer, or you said, I mean, you said you were doing your phones for like bits and pieces and ideas, but what else are you kind of using to record at home?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly work off of my iPad.
Okay.
Yeah, I use GarageBand on my iPad. I'm really behind the the recording. I haven't quite gotten into joined the teams of computer recording, so I'm still slumming it on my iPad, but that seems to work actually well enough for my needs right now. I mean, I don't feel like I'll ever be proficient enough with home recording without spending a lot of time. I mean, that's a whole college
thing.
degree and field of study in itself. And
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know that I can, learn all of that and also, keep playing and writing as much. So I just want to focus mostly on writing and keep the, recording, I guess, to a minimum for now until, or at least keep my setup, kind of simplified right now. But
sure.
Yeah, I usually start, when I get those seeds of ideas, I'll, either sit down with my guitar into my phone voice memo, or if I don't have a guitar with me, if I'm driving or just happen to be, out doing errands or something, I'll just sing it into my phone.
Yeah.
And come back later. And then periodically I go through those and I scrub my phone and, pick out which one. Okay, I want to prioritize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And I'll record those into GarageBand, add parts, and try and develop kind of a demo.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I'll send it off to, whoever I happen to be working with on that project, if it's you or other musician friends that I'm working with, and they'll bring it into their systems, record their parts. They will do bass lines and vocals, and we'll all kind of share the files back and forth that way. And so every iteration of the song has another layer added, and so that's been working really well for us this year, during during lockdown, since we can't get together, and we're doing these virtual recording. Not really, they're not really songwriting sessions because we're not quite, playing off of each other the way we would
in person.
So that's the thing we're still really missing. I mean, get together in person, and there's just no substitute for that, in music.
There really isn't. No, I mean, whether you're writing or playing or appreciating music, there's nothing like gathering and, being in a group for an audience, being in a band for a performance, or being in the same room for songwriting and collaboration. There's no replacing that, that's just how we've done it for forever. And luckily we have some tools to help us now. You mentioned like the digital audio recording stuff, the Workstations DAWs, or, even recording on your phone, your iPad, whatever. We have a ton of tools to be able to at least attempt that, at least do something. But nothing will ever replace the in-person experience of music. That's the way it's meant and designed, and that's the way it's intended to be consumed and appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, I miss going out to, even seeing live music. That's something I'm just accustomed to doing, quite a bit. And this year it's just been so bizarre. I mean, obviously in every way imaginable, but music too.
Yeah, and you can catch stuff. I mean, a lot of guys are trying to and are doing online stuff, right? Like they're doing live streams and they're doing those things, but it's still just, It's cool. And I watch several, I have a lot of guys that I follow and girls and people, individuals. I say guys all the time, people, individuals that I follow and watch, and they're awesome. And it's very cool to watch them be creative, especially sometimes in their own space, in their own home or their own place. It is cool. There's something to it that is cool. But I still wouldn't trade the live experience for, what we have now,
Yeah, no, there's definitely something just extra engaging about being in the room, and watching the performance unfold, especially when there's some surprises and, I mean, the songs are always a little bit different when they're played live. I mean, I love all that stuff. I don't want, to see like exact reproductions when I go out to show. I like little variations and, just the energy that comes with a live show and the, sending energy back and forth between the performers and the audience. I mean, this really is just such a cool feeling, on either end. If you're on stage and you're getting the energy from the audience, that's amazing. And then if you're in the audience and grooving with a group, I mean, that's a great thing too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's the best experience, man. Having that it's a conversation between the musician and the audience, between the performer and the audience. I mean, the audience is just as much a part of that experience as the performer or the person that's creating the music on stage or wherever they are. I mean, having that interaction, that event, that experience is only happening there, that time, right there. And as many times as that artist plays that song or performs that song to other cities or other people or whatever, that experience is shared by those people and those people alone. And it's cool, man. There's something to that,
Yeah, different kinds of music, totally engages the audience differently too.
Yeah.
We were talking a while back about, like a jazz show will sometimes be sort of cerebral. Most people are kind of quiet and just like kind of checking out what's happening. Versus a metal show where people are screaming and jumping around. Versus, I used to play in a ska band, and that it's just such bouncy, happy music. Everybody was dancing. As a performer, to see the whole audience, dancing and enjoying themselves. I mean, that's the best, reward that you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought of another thing that we were talking about the other day when we were talking about songwriting too, is, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, of listening to other people's music and playing, those parts and then kind of making it your own. And you said you write a lot of songs when you're like writing or playing other people's music or playing an idea or playing a scale or a song or chords and stuff. And then you kind of find something in there that makes it interesting, And I think that that's one of the things that I appreciated about songwriting was I never really wanted to play other people's music. I was never really that interested in performing, note for note, any really other people's music. I always wanted to write my own music and do my own stuff. So I would learn a piece by, my favorite rock band or, whoever it is that I wanted to learn. And I would play it. And then I would just imagine where else it could go. Or I would think about what the next part would be or what I would do with it or where I would write it, And so I would take music that was already speaking to me that I enjoyed and then alter it or modify it in a way that made it my own, And I think that's where a lot of music comes from because as you said earlier, there are no new chords. There are no new notes. There's no new rhythms. There's no new melodies. Like they're really, the configurations of notes have largely been exhausted. I mean, specifically in Western music where we only have 12 notes, pretty much every note had been played right from the beginning, like there's really nothing that Bach didn't do, that you can do now and not point back and say, oh, they didn't do that, like from the resolutions to the chords, to the tonics, to the minors, to the relatives, to, modulations. And I mean, you can't think of a concept that hasn't been around since Bach invented music theory, basically, like that's where we get a lot of our music theory from. And so taking those ideas and making them your own, that is creativity. And that is an expression of your own ideas. And it's not, if you blatantly rip off someone else's song, obviously that's crossing a line, but I think the best thing you can do, as we've been talking about this whole way along, if you want to be a songwriter and you are interested in that, is to just continually do it. Listen to music, play along with it, make it your own, and then figure out what parts of that are the best parts of that you want to continue and pursue to make that music your own, to adapt it to what you want to hear, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you said something, just now about listening to music, and that I think learning how to listen to music is a skill also. And my dad taught me how to listen to music by sitting down, with records, and he would point out, "Oh, you hear that little bass line? Isn't that
Yeah.
cool?" And before, I wouldn't pick out the individual layers of a song. I would hear
Yeah.
a song and it's as like a flat, just a
Sure.
component
Two-dimensional
of its
objects, sort
own
of.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
But there's a skill to being able to listen for a specific part, and listen for the bass line, the piano, the guitar, and how they're all kind of working together. And I
Yeah.
love doing that. Even now, I'll sit down and listen to a whole record, like start to finish, and just go
Yeah.
on that journey and
Yeah.
appreciate the little sections, even something I've heard,
A million
hundred.
times.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
I'll just appreciate it. And I love to do that, with people, to show them
Hmm.
like, wow, listen to this great little part here.
Yeah. That's an
But
interesting point too about the different layers that it takes and how to appreciate and listen to music. Because if you think about music when you first start listening to it, you've seen those like images or those pieces of artwork where you like look at it from one angle and it looks like a face or it looks like
yeah,
a horse or whatever, but then you like walk around the side of it and you see it's all these little individual pieces that are hanging down that all create this one thing. And so it's kind of like that, or it's like this, when you view it from the front, it's a two-dimensional object and you see the flat plane in which it exists, but when you turn it on its side, you see that it's this deep well of different things that all stack up and add up, all these individual two-dimensional objects that all stack together and create this one, image that you see from the front, built up of all of these different parts from the side and from the ground up.
right. Yeah, knowing how to kind of isolate those layers and
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what it is you're hearing that you really like. It's like,
Sure.
I
I
like
love
this
this
song,
song.
especially
Why?
part.
Right.
What is it about this part? And
Right.
maybe it's a horn line, or
Yeah.
a keyboard part, or just some
Bass
texture
fill,
in it.
drum something, right? Yeah, some background texture, like anything. Yeah, could be anything, but you don't know how to even pick that apart without understanding how to listen to the music and how to listen for those parts and what is even that instrument. I mean, sometimes, especially when you're starting out, you listen to a song and you're like, what even is that instrument? Is that
Yeah,
a guitar? Is that a keyboard? Is that a bass? Is that, how do I even identify what instrument is playing that part?
yeah. I mean, that's I think a win if you can get a sound like that your audience is kind of wondering what is that. I mean, you've touched on something there, and that's happened to me where I'm hearing them going, is that a guitar? If that is, that's a really odd sounding guitar, and it's just something intriguing about it. I mean, I think that can be a neat thing to add into songs too. And you hear that in a lot
Mm,
of pop songs.
yeah.
You'll have kind of a unique instrument that will carry the melody, or at least provide a real memorable hook.
Right.
That Gautier song, uh, he was using a marimba, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you hear, sometimes the main hook on a song will be a sitar, something that really catches your ear.
Yeah.
So I tend to try to do that sometimes, just
Mm,
find like a tone. Sometimes, even the same line played
yeah.
with a different tone can really change like the impact of the song. So
Yeah,
I guess
absolutely.
another little, songwriting technique
Yeah.
that I try to do sometimes is just like mix up the tone, or even assign that part to a whole different instrument. Maybe it doesn't
Yeah.
need to be a guitar line at all. Maybe it's a string part or something, or
It's where
yeah.
songwriting kind of borders on orchestration, like you have a song, you
Mhm.
have an idea, and then it's how do we put this out to a group of musicians or a collective of instruments to make it sound like one piece written together.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Mm,
tend to do that, when I'm kind of hearing ideas. Is I'll hear an idea and then think, okay, what instrument was that line, fall nicely in? Is that a
mm,
bass line? Is that, a little piccolo, something real high, low, middle? All that kind of stuff is
yeah.
can add to it.
Do you think it's, if you could go back and start on maybe a, either a different instrument or a different way, do you think it's more or less easy to write music on a specific instrument? Do you think there's a instrument that lends itself to songwriting more than another? Or what do you think about accompanying your instrumentation?
I mean, I love guitar for songwriting. I think guitar is one of the best. I don't play a ton of other instruments. Obviously piano. I mean, guitar and piano, I think, are just great, because they're polyphonic. You can have, chords and melody going at the same time. You can really get a more complete idea realized. I mean, and I know guys do, right? The
saxophone
on the saxophone, on the trumpets.
Sure.
I've never tried that kind of like monophonic writing, but that I'm sure there are ways to. I always kind of wondered how, or thought, that drummers would have difficulty as songwriters, but there are some notable, really talented songwriters that are primarily drummers, and I guess that's just a different, you're approaching it from a rhythmic angle, but you really do that with all instruments. I mean,
rhythm is what makes it interesting anyway. I mean, there's only 12 notes, but there's thousands of rhythmic combinations for those 12 notes, I mean, I talk a lot about rhythm when I teach students or when I present people music. Like right in the beginning, I talk more about rhythm than anything else, because rhythm is really what connects to you. That's, what makes a Latin beat different from a shuffle beat is the rhythm. It has nothing to do with the notes you're playing. You're playing the same notes, So the rhythms are really what change the feel, the flavor, the texture, the type of the song that it is really based mostly on rhythms. The reason that Joy to the World is a song and not a straight descent on a major scale is because it's in a different rhythm. Otherwise, the notes are literally the 8 notes of the major scale, but you play them in their rhythm and everybody recognizes that it's Joy to the World. So rhythm is really the most important, I think, aspect of music in general. I think the notes are important, but the rhythms are probably, I would say, even more important, or at least as important as the notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the phrasing of a line, based on what rhythm you're using, gives a totally different flavor. You can play the same line 8 different ways, and with just slight little variations, and only one of them may work on whatever piece you happen to be doing. So I mean, it's just a ton of trial and error, and and like we said earlier, you'll fail many more times than you'll get something that's a keeper. So
if you haven't written 100 terrible songs, you've probably never written one good song either. Like you just get more bad ones than you get good ones. That's just how it is. It's with just about everything.
Yeah, well, they're not bad. They're just they're not great. And it's like
maybe not worth pursuing necessarily, or it would take too much effort or more effort than you're willing to put into it to make it something worth listening to.
Yeah, you don't want to force it, over force it too much. That I think most of the time, when it feels right, and it, and you're not forcing it. It's just coming out, flowing organically. Then that's something to really explore. I mean, if it just like feels good, there's no little hiccups, nothing to it. If there are those things, you can always work through it. But then you're getting to the ROI you're talking about. Is like, how much time can I spend repairing this, or should I just move on?
And also, I thought of another thing while we were talking about that as well, that not every song is for every artist. So Prince, really phenomenal artist and great in his own right of his own songwriting. He wrote a lot of songs for other people, and that actually is really common, that some artists were just prolific songwriters, but they didn't always feel comfortable or didn't feel like the song was right for them. And he wrote a ton of music for other people. And a lot of that stuff, like Janis Joplin originally had songs written by Chris Christopherson, who was like a country guy, like there are lots of artists that write music for other artists because they're like, hey, I hear this, I listened to your song, or I listened to this or whatever, and this is what came to mind. I wrote this song for you. And then the other artist performs it. So sometimes it's not even that it's a bad song, or it's not even that it's like not a good idea. It just might not be a good idea for you. It might be a song that you're writing for someone else, or with, you know, you're listening to a lot of, you know, Zeppelin or whatever. And you're like, man, I'm really more of a jazz guy, but I hear this song and like maybe a Zeppelin band or somebody that's like hard rock could cover this or give it, you know, and that's when you can sell your music or give your music away. And that's a whole nother topic of, you know, giving music to other people. But that's pretty common as well, you know, that songwriters that are very good often write songs for other people.
Yeah, or even you know, write or compose for different instruments, which
Sure.
I think is you know, interesting. I mean, yeah, that writing for another artist, like you said. I mean, I think I do have a few songs that I've got like earmarked for other artists. Not that I, you know, that they'll do them, but I'm hearing them like, oh, I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, this artist, or you know, that's sort of what I hear. I just use these reference points, you know,
Right.
like to give an indication of, you know, the
The
vibe that
style,
I'm
the
feeling with
feel.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's a, you know, a female vocalist, male vocalist, I mean, you kind of make those decisions right away,
Right.
or maybe it's a duet or something, you know,
Yeah,
and you
sure.
can,
Yeah.
we don't have those anymore. I think we
Yeah.
can use a few more duets.
Yeah, man. Not enough of those, man. Yeah. Thank you for your time today, man. And appreciate you coming
Thanks
on
for
to talk
having me.
about songwriting. And hopefully folks got some value out of this. And if you have any questions about songwriting, or you want to learn something more, or you guys are interested in talking a little more to Mr. Mica, go ahead and just send an email to School of Rock. It's Santa Ana at schoolofrock.com, or santaana.schoolofrock.com. And you can come give us an email and let us know that you saw the Mica Winsett episode and that you had a question about songwriting. We can pass that on, and we'll certainly put you in touch and we can talk a little more about songwriting. We also teach songwriting classes, and we have camps and workshops as well that hopefully Mr. Mica will come and be a part of, and then you can learn directly from the man himself. So really appreciate your time today, Mica. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody.
Cool.
School of Rock. Santa Ana.